Hello, everyone, and welcome to Open Mic Gripe with myself, Jeffrey Ide,
and Jay Rice.
The place where serious and silly complaints come to chat.
Open Mic Gripe is a weekly podcast dedicated to hearing your gripes, grievances, and opinions on any and all topics.
Every episode, Jay and I will have an opportunity to get to the bottom of the issues which are lingering on the back of your mind and engage you in order to create constructive conversation using a combination of lighthearted comedy and well-formed logic.
If you feel like we are wrong, inappropriate, or biased, and let's be honest, likely you will, then call in, email, or tweet and let your voice be heard. You can email us at openmicgripe@gmail.com or tweet us at openmicgripe. And both of those are one word, Open Mic Gripe.
Personally, I love being corrected, but I want to impress that we can only learn by sharing our and your perspectives.
You know, as a comedian, I want everyone to feel open to sharing their views and then potentially having them ridiculed.
On this show, I will always respect the individuals who share with us, but your views, beliefs, and values are all up for debate. I hold nothing sacred.
I also hold nothing sacred. I may not even respect you, but I do like you.
So jump on in and gripe on the open mic with Jay Rice and Jeffrey Ide.
Hello, everybody, and again, welcome back to the Open Mic Gripe with myself, Jay Rice.
And Jeffrey Ide.
Well, Jeffrey, I hear you have a complaint for us today, a gripe.
Yeah, you know, I guess I was coming up with a number of things that...
You know what? Before we even mention this, I have a gripe of my own.
Okay.
And I don't want to reference too many past episodes, just because we never know exactly what order we're going to put these in. But Jeffrey has before mentioned that he cannot be late for things. He has to be early. You were like an hour late today.
I was not an hour late.
You were an hour late.
What we had was a concrete time, and
then I told you need to be there before that concrete time, and then you were only 5 minutes early of that concrete time when you should have been an hour.
That doesn't sound like an agreement at all.
Yeah, we're not I didn't say we had an agreement. I said I had a gripe.
Okay. Gripe validated.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need. I just need somebody to validate me.
No, I absolutely agree. Within any reasonable control, I always time things, and I hate being late. This was one of those situations where I begrudgingly showed up right before the time we previously agreed.
I'm just saying, you're full of BS.
Well...
All right, so what's the gripe that you got today?
So, one of the things I've been thinking about recently is our society is full of claims that are just blankly asserted without, and largely they're opinion-based, but they're claims which don't have perspective to them.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is people will say something claiming that something is the best or that something is bad without any experience or knowledge about the subject.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like when I first started eating sushi, my dad gave me a lot of crap about it because he's like, I'll get this walleye and I'll cut it open for you and you can eat raw fish. And he was really against raw fish, never ate it.
That is actually what Jay's dad sounds like.
Yeah, I'm Jay's dad.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's very easy to be close-minded, and it's even easier to be judgmental. But when you're living in amongst a lot of other people, those other people, I believe, should have the responsibility of putting you in your place if you're talking crap without perspective. So when I hear claims...
USA is number one!
Oh, yeah, right?
USA is number one! Have you ever been to another country?
I hear that all the time, actually, when it comes to American exceptionalism, American education, American healthcare, you name it. People will be very quick to say, America is number one. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I have very limited experience in the world, but no.
I thought it was funny that you mentioned healthcare, considering out of all the industrialized nations, we are one of the only ones without universal healthcare.
Right, or education, in which we consistently falling in terms of results. And I think it's interesting that we're so proud of what it means to be a nation, what it means to be American, that we're so rarely able to look outside of our own experience.
Right. And I think a lot of times many Americans are even afraid to experience other nations or other countries too.
And this is largely sociocultural as well. I mean, this idea that it's okay to be afraid. it's okay to live within your safety zone, your comfort box, and that people don't push you to embrace your fears or to experience something new. I hear this all the time. People say, well, I'm afraid of that. Don't push them.
Oh, really? You hear other people say, don't push them?
Yeah.
Don't make them get out of their comfort zone?
If somebody's afraid of heights, for example, I'll, gently and hopefully...
push them off of a cliff? Just a little nudge?
Well, I'd like to set up situations in which we can confront these issues, because who are we as human beings if we can't confront our fears?
Well, and I used to teach public speaking. One of the only ways to get over your fear of public speaking is to speak publicly.
Well, it seems to be true about all fears.
Yeah, you have to experience them to help get over them.
Or people who say, I'm scared of sharks. So it's like, you live in Fargo, North Dakota, and you've never been to the ocean.
That is a little ridiculous. But I used to breed snakes. And I don't give me that look. I used to breed snakes, and all the time people would be afraid of them. But there was a lot of times where I could actually get somebody to. I'd have the snakes that I knew that I could take out around people, and I could usually convince them to touch my snake.
Okay. That's a talent in itself.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking, you're a snake breeder from North Dakota.
Well, hey, what else are we going to do up
the
here?
fanny pack of the Midwest.
The fanny pack of the Midwest. That is correct.
But, okay, so there's so many of these things that I see them all the time, and it's kind of frustrating to me.
You see them or you hear them?
I see people using this lack of perspective as an excuse for making claims. I have a good friend, a virgin, right?
You know one? No. Wow.
I know an adult virgin, yes. And I'm not judging...
Okay, wait, when you say an adult virgin, how old is this person?
Late 20s.
Late? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's almost impressive.
At that point, yeah. And I'm not judging if, virginity is not something to shame. I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with being a virgin. But when you're a virgin and claiming that it's better to be, or that you prefer not having sex, that's the argument from ignorance.
But that's a weird way to claim, because if they would claim that having sex is better, can they claim that? Well, then they're not a virgin anymore, though. So who would have sex and then claim that it would be better to be a virgin because they've already gotten rid of that?
I think the lack of people out there claiming that they wish they were still virgins is conclusive evidence of that.
Be kind of a point, yeah.
It's not like people are like, gee golly, I wish I could take it all back.
Well, but that's kind of getting into cognitive dissonance, where you have to, once it's basically presented to you or you're in that area, you can't really go back, and so you have to basically say that it's better.
Although, to be fair, I went down to the local comic book shop a couple weeks ago, and I had my virginity neatly wrapped in a package form waiting for me when I walked in the door. No, I'm kidding. I love you comic book nerd guys. But yes.
Yeah, let me work on the jokes, Jeffrey.
Fair enough.
I could see you walking into a comic book store and getting your virginity back.
There you go.
It's like regrowing your hymen.
Never mind.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think when it comes to lack of perspective, we hear these things all the time. We hear about people driving large vehicles saying how they hate those compact cars and they hate the way they drive and they're crappy. Well, honestly, you've only ever driven a motorcycle and a truck in your life, or
isn't the motorcycle very compact?
Yeah, you could say so. No, it's I'm astounded by how often people will make these claims, and it's not just about social things either. It's about deeply held beliefs or political values, right. Like we said with the idea of American exceptionalism, like religion. It's easy to say that the religion you're raised with is
the best.
It's the best.
Especially if you've only been that religion your whole life.
Right.
And never read another religious text.
Right.
And never experienced it in any other kind of way. Never taken hallucinogens to have a religious experience or anything like that.
Correct. Or the judgment on people who do drugs, or the judgment on people who travel or hitchhike. That's one that I've had a lot of recently.
Yeah, I've had, trust me, I've been planning a trip hitchhiking down to San Francisco. Everybody is absolutely against it. And I'm like, well, have you ever picked up a hitchhiker? No. Have you ever talked to a hitchhiker? No. Okay, well, I have. I have picked up hitchhikers. Yes. I've invited a hitchhiker to stay in my house after they hitched with me from Bismarck to Fargo. And yeah, all of it was a great experience. And she was a single female traveling alone with her dog, basically. And after speaking to her, she had never had a bad experience.
Well, yeah, and I can agree with that. I've been hitchhiking for a number of years around the world. I've never hitchhiked in the United States, but that's going to change soon.
Right. Well, you just got your license for the first time recently.
No.
Yeah, well,
no.
You drove a moped that you could drive without a license, so why?
I've had a license for years. Anyway,
okay.
It was a European
Sure
license.
You have.
But yeah, so when it comes to hitchhiking, that's one of those things where people act on fear-based decisions and fear-based reactions. And you can find incredibly open-minded people who are very quick to jump to this conclusion.
Well, and that was a crazy... When I was talking with... And I say crazy too much. I got to get out of that. But with the girl that I was talking to, I completely forgot her name. And now I just forgot where she was from. But she was from overseas, and she said that... I said, well... She said every person that picks her up is like... This is like, how could you do this? This is crazy. You shouldn't be doing this. Something bad is going to happen to you. She said every single person that picked her up said that.
You're right.
But yet they picked her up.
And this happens all the time. And it's amazing to me how when hitchhiking internationally, the attitudes are very different. In fact, it's open-minded people meeting open-minded people. And you just have love and humanity and joy and all that good stuff everywhere you go.
And that's what she said. She was from Poland. Now I remember that. But she was talking about how it's a interesting way to interject yourself into somebody's life for a very short amount of time.
Yes.
And I love that. And that's actually, it was her that actually caused me to really want to go out and plan this hitchhiking trip with my dog.
Yeah, absolutely. And I highly recommend it to anybody out there. Just use common sense. Don't get on the side of the road and put your thumb out, but go to a truck stop or a gas station and meet people. Say hello. And I think it's this mentality of going into it that you've seen something in the movies or you've heard people talking about this fear-mongering that exists in this country about safety and security, and you don't know what's going to happen. Honestly, this all drives me crazy because this is one of the most secure places I've ever lived. And people have no idea what it means to be afraid on a day-to-day level.
Right.
And not only that, it's just when it comes to hitchhiking...
Well, I can't imagine a single movie that puts hitchhiking in a positive way.
There are a few. I think they're typically older movies. They'll represent the good old days of the 60s.
Oh, Free Love, pick it up in a bus and hitchhike and
gas, or grass.
Yeah, that was the same.
Yeah. Standard currency.
But see, now that's also a negative spin on hitchhiking, wouldn't it be?
Right, I would agree. And when, in fact, you just meet wonderful people most of the time.
Right.
So I try to ask myself, what is it about people that's resistant to experiencing something but quick to denounce it? Yeah. And it's largely just fear. It's largely ignorance. And we, as a society, I feel, are obligated to approach these things and encourage people to keep an open mind.
I do. I do. I know that people that are close to me are definitely like that, where they will shoot something down without having any experience on it. And where me, I am a sucker for new things. I'm not even like a big fan of fast food or anything, but if there's like a new thing that comes out with fast food, I have to try it. There's a new Doritos, I have to try it. I know I don't like mutton, but if it's made in a new way, I have to try it. I have to try something that I've never tried before.
Right. And I mean, as humans, we are machines for generalization. We are exceptional at generalizing things, which is so important that we recognize that and we try to get past it. We're able to take our generalizations, our presuppositions about something and say, well, that may not be true in this case.
Right, and it does take a lot. I think for a lot of people, it does take a lot of effort to get over that initial dislike or fear of it. But I think a lot of people. Here's the thing: you guys get out there, try something new, try something you haven't, and if you still hate it, gripe about it to us.
If you want to go traveling and you're complaining about money, you're complaining about not enough time, you're complaining about your job, doing this and this, just do it.
Yeah,
just do it.
You just have to go
no more excuses.
I wonder what we're advocating for right now. I wonder what people are going to be like. Well, I tried this for the first time. Meth.
Well, no, and you don't have to try things to know that they're harmful or know that they're bad in certain circumstances. But the important thing is trying not to judge them until you have a complete data set, until you're actually able to look at things, research them, or talk to people and ask questions. And I think that's the key right there, asking questions.
Yeah.
Because we're so quick to say this is this and that is that. Try asking a question or two and getting someone else's perspective, because that's how we learn.
No, I agree. I think we're kind of, if this is the choir right here, we're preaching to the choir. But luckily, hopefully, this is going out to more people, and hopefully people listen up and try something new.
I hope we catch some closed-minded people today. Change their perspective.
Or I doubt it. But they were probably too afraid to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, right? Trying something new.
And have already judged it. Open Mic Gripe, that sounds awful. I will never listen to that.
Oh, it's a good thing they didn't hear our original title.
Yeah, whatever.
The title which should never be named
You
again.
like that stuff that will never be named again.
Yes. So I was wondering if you'd like to introduce someone who's here with us today.
Well, I mean, would I like to? Not necessarily. But I absolutely will. All right, so everybody, today we have our first guest ever. Hold on, I probably got to bring that up a little bit. Yeah, our first guest ever, yeah. All right, yeah, his name is Amir Bikic. My former best friend and former comic.
Hey, how's it going? It's Amir. Yes, former best friend. I guess I didn't go on this venture of making a podcast to bitch about stuff with him, so...
Oh, well, I never asked you. So.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I could have taken 40 minutes to set this up, too, right before we started, so... But I think you guys are giving out terrible advice to people, telling them to try things.
Yeah? Why?
Oh, yeah?
Why? Because some things you should just never try if you don't like it.
Like what?
Well, like everything. I don't think you should ever try anything new. I think you should stick with what you're comfortable with. That's how you get murdered. Every time, nobody's ever gotten murdered doing the same thing that they always do. It's always when you try something different, and I just don't want to be that one guy that gets murdered because two guys on a podcast told me, hey, go hitchhike.
Well,
because let's say, some truck drivers listen to a lot of podcasts. They're like, hey, you know what? There's going to be a lot more open-minded people sitting around truck stops. This is a great way to murder somebody. So, I mean, I think everything should come with a disclaimer here. Just saying, hey, why don't you just role play with a friend and hitchhike and try something new that way?
Role play.
Amir.
I mean, just be safe.
Amir setting us back already.
Hey, I've lived in many other countries. I've hitchhiked before. I think I can make a...
Many other countries?
I've hitchhiked in plenty of other countries. Yes, I have.
Well, I mean, more than Bosnia?
Yeah, Croatia as well.
Okay.
Those are two different countries, and if people say, oh, that's all the same, let's talk about the Civil War that happened, about how that it's not all the same. So, but that's a different topic.
So, have you ever hitchhiked in the U.S., Amir?
No, I haven't, because it's scary. But I have hitchhiked as a child with my family. I would hitchhike, and I remember sitting there. Most of the time, the people were very nice, but there was always that fear of sitting in the back of that car as a 8-9-year-old child, not knowing this person, not knowing what they're going to do, because at any time, you don't know if they can talk all nice, they can be sweet, they can laugh with you. Next thing you know, they take the wrong turn, and there has been a couple times where they asked us to leave the car because somebody said something that they didn't like. Right. It was a very awkward and very scary situation because it's a mother and two children hitchhiking, and the only reason that we hitchhike, not for the adventure, which I think a lot of people that have to hitchhike look down upon, the adventurer, hitchhikers were like, I'm doing this to meet new people, and somebody's like, I need to get back home because my life, is going downhill. So I think that there are two different reasons why people hitchhike.
Oh, yeah.
And, it just depends on who picks you up. Most people that are going to pick somebody up, I think they would do it out of the kindness of their heart.
It also depends about the attitudes as well going into it. I mean, in Eastern Europe, I've experienced a lot of times people are a huge percentage of the population is willing to pull over and pick someone up as opposed to just the odd driver around here.
Right. Oh, absolutely. But attitudes in Europe are completely different about everything, while here our media, really does focus on a lot of the violence, a lot of negativity, but we make sure that nobody can see a boob. That's the big thing here. But, growing up in Europe...
It's a damn shame.
Growing up in Europe, I remember being a 6-7-year-old kid, before cartoons were on, they would have like an NC-17 movie playing on that same channel. and we never thought anything about it. It was just like, oh, those are boobs. And then you go into your cartoons. So people are just, they're not completely just pumped full of everything is awful, everything is bad, people are killing each other. Hey, watch this movie where this guy busts into a bank and kills everybody. So now next time you go to a bank, all you're doing is like, oh my God, is somebody going to bust in? You know, we give these scenarios to people, so everywhere they go, they're always on edge.
Yeah, that was actually a big thing. That hitchhiker from Poland, I was just like, well, when I was talking to her about, like, well, isn't this scary? I'm like, aren't you worried? She's like, you know what? In the U.S., she goes, she's like, I've seen your media. You guys like demonize and are basically fear mongers for everything. But she goes, one thing that you don't talk about is about how, she goes, I would be much more afraid as a girl going into a party and drinking. And she said, that's what I fear. And then when she said that, I was like, wow. I was like, yeah, none of my friends that are females really ever think about that. Think about how dangerous just that situation is.
Because we glorify it here. We really do. We glorify that partying. You know, that's how you meet that person. You know, you get together. But that's where a lot of problems happen, is because you go to those parties and you drink, whether it's going home with the wrong person or driving drunk. But to Americans, that is the way of life.
Well, especially for younger people when it comes to domestic assault and sexual abuse, 80 to 86% of the people who this happens to, it happens to a close friend. It happens to people you've known in the bar. It happens to the people you party with. And hitchhiking, the statistics just aren't there. Right. I mean, it's a lot safer because...
Well, do we know that the statistics aren't there because those people have been murdered and never been found? So I think that it might be skewed a little bit there.
I'm just always impressed by the day-to-day things that people don't consider the danger about. Right. Driving to work, going to the bar,
that's what I
shopping.
That was my point when I was trying to argue about hitchhiking. I said it is the most dangerous part of hitchhiking is just riding in the car. Yeah, it's just because there's more chance of me dying because of regular traffic accidents more than them going, hey, I've got a gun, I've got a knife, bang, stab, you're dead.
Yep.
Statistically, they're not going to stab or shoot you in their car because otherwise people are not going to be coming into their, stabby, shooty up car. So
I like that Amir knows that
well, if you're going to kill a hitchhiker, I mean, you don't do it in your own car. It's just that's hitchhiking 101.
If you're hitchhiking, don't get into a rental.
Yeah. People don't care. You pay like $9. You can do whatever you want in there.
They're like, why is it filled with all this blood? Hey man, I paid the $9.
No questions. We're like Cole's return policy. No questions asked. We just do it.
Wow, this all started as alleviating the concerns of those who want to go hitchhiking, of course. No, I find this very interesting, though. It's because you've been in Eastern Europe.
Yes. I was born in Bosnia, and I lived there from 84 to 96. So I guess you really wouldn't count the first 4 or 5 years as really living there, as I was a baby and a toddler. Yeah. So I don't have the experience, but I do from the experience that I have there. People are a lot more open-minded. People are a lot more willing to help that person, whether they know him or not, just because that's the right thing to do, because you don't want to be stuck in that situation where I wish somebody would help me out here, and that's kind of the mentality over there. I remember, the fear that my mom put into us when we were children is, you guys are just going to stay home for an hour by yourselves. The neighbor's watching you, and the neighbor's going to see everything you do. That wasn't the neighbor's creepy as this would have been taken here. It's, we have somebody that's making sure you're okay.
Well, it's a lot more. It's a lot stricter of communal organization there. It takes a village,
Oh, absolutely.
And the United States is much more of an individualistic country, and so we want to provide the freedom to not be judged within your own community, which is also huge.
I gotta say that, especially definitely like where my parents are from, they have tried to get. I mean, we're from a really small town, and so everybody knew everybody. And when they moved to Bismarck, they tried to get to know their neighbors, and it was just so incredibly hard to get to know their neighbors, but I feel very lucky because I'm a single dude, but I live in a family neighborhood, and like my neighbor, like all the kids come over to his house to like play, and then some days they'll go over to another person's house and play. So I'm lucky that I live in kind of a little bit more of a community where I'm at here in Fargo.
Well, I think a lot of people live in those communities, but they're just too afraid to go out and actually meet their neighbors.
Right.
Because I strongly believe that people are just scared. They're scared of that neighbor. They're scared of being labeled the creepy guy or the guy that, you can love kids and you want to have kids play in your yard. You're like, hey, come over, we'll play catch. Maybe he wasn't able to have kids. Maybe he lost a younger brother and never had that chance. Right. But the first thing that we do is we label him as the creepy neighbor that likes kids, and nobody wants to have that.
Is this what
He's speaking on experience again.
Yeah.
Amir's bring all your kids over.
From my perspective, I see people around here as unwilling to confront their fears. And I think this is a fear about being judged. I think it's a fear about being disapproved of, and people just not willing to take that risk because they don't have to within their own neighborhoods.
And actually, yeah, like if somebody would walk up to somebody's door and just even try to introduce themselves, we've talked about the Minnesota nice, North Dakota nice, they would probably be like, oh, hey, yeah, that's nice to meet you. And then they would go inside and like talk to their wife and go, what the hell was that all about? Why did that weirdo come to my door to introduce himself? He lives 2 doors down from me. Why would I need to know him?
We just wave to each other. Isn't that enough?
I brought for St. Patrick's Day, I bought I share a house with another person. I bought my downstairs neighbor 3 boxes of beer, and I put, a card on the top. I said, thanks for being a kick-ass neighbor. And he wrote to me. He said, nobody's ever done something this nice for me as a neighbor. And why not? Why can't we live together?
See,
how hot is she?
He's very gentle.
Okay, all right.
Well, yeah, and I feel very lucky too because my neighbor, I would say I'm one of the worst neighbors because I don't really mow my lawn until my neighbors have. Basically, it's just like I'm just waiting to try to keep up with them. But he'll mow my front yard or whatnot because he's already out doing that kind of stuff. Yeah. So about all I can do is offer him the extra space in my garbage that I don't use up.
Yeah. Might as well.
He's got kids and everything. They produce a lot of garbage. I'm a single dude. I don't produce a lot of garbage. So yeah, use my trash can, man.
That works. Yeah.
And I give him baked goods all the time.
That is very generous of you.
Yeah, another man's trash. Another man's trash can always fit into your garbage. Yes. I don't know if that's the saying.
I think
Amir, if I can go back to something you were saying, I really enjoyed this idea of European attitudes about sexuality. I was wondering if you can speak more on that.
I guess ever since I was a kid, but I just saw boobs as it's boobs, There was nothing, it wasn't sexualized to me until my body started making those changes, and I'm like, oh, I realized I like this. This is something I enjoy. It wasn't something that, I made this conscious effort of I'm going to like this because I saw it on TV. It was just... something weird's happening in the studio here. But, we never looked at it. I remember you could actually buy gum, a single piece of gum that's wrapped in a sticker with a naked lady. And you would have a collection. So you would go out to the little market and you would just say, here's $1, give me, 4 of those. And you get 4 pieces of gum that have a sticker of naked ladies. And then whenever we would hang out. So a lot of the neighborhood was covered with naked lady stickers. That's just what kids do. But if, and I don't know if people here, it just seems like it's such a taboo. Yeah. But then you look at how many sex offenders are here. And I mean, that you can get on a whole deeper level. But when something is just completely it's against the rules, these people, and I don't know, I didn't do my study. I just, this is what I think. And of course, that's what I say. And, it makes me ignorant. But if you don't, make something just that's such a big taboo and making it not big of a deal, you're not going to have people that are just needing it and wanting it so bad that they will do anything to get it.
That's the nature of taboo.
And we've talked about the drug war previously, and that's in other countries, you can drink. I know when my buddy was living in England, right. He could go down to the pub and they would have candy shots. Mm-hmm. And basically, in smaller areas, they would call their parents and be like, how many candy shots can you have? And they'd be like, you can have 2 candy shots. And it wasn't... it didn't grow into such people weren't alcoholics because they could try it when they were younger, and it wasn't just this glorified thing where when you turn 21 you have to wait, and then when they turn 21 they're just like, now I'm going to drink all the time.
Yeah, I have to agree with both of you here. It's in Europe, it's such a more lax attitude. It's not only about alcohol in terms of just being raised drinking with your family and drinking in a safe environment. it not being a thing by the time you get to university. But with sexuality, it's this idea, not only, the rampant sexism on candy stickers aside.
Right.
I
do believe they might have had some for the little girls if they wanted the guy.
Right, just like a
in
big
the
old
Speedo,
dong.
yeah. I mean, and that is true. There was a lot of the sexism where women were seen as sexual objects.
Right.
But then you didn't have a lot of the hollering and a lot of the, inappropriate, at least I didn't see that,
right.
Where you just make women feel comfortable as you do around here when you get a group of guys.
The cat calling.
Yeah, you didn't see that. Like, so for me, I guess to me, I think that's just silly because how do you do that? That's somebody's mother or daughter. And, being that we did grow up in that, small area, you don't yell at that woman because that's either your friend's daughter or your mother or something like that. But
that also goes back into a sort of a cultural norm of a family owning the women and its attitudes towards protecting them.
Right. And I mean, which is a weird way of saying like owning the women because, well, I guess where I come from, the women usually made the rules.
Yeah.
It was, a lot of people are like, oh, and it is kind of hero of that, like, oh, my wife makes me clean the gutters on Saturday. It's kind of the same concept over there, except as you don't mess with my wife. You don't say anything about that because over there, violence was a lot more accepted. Right. When somebody stepped out of line, they would get taught a lesson, and there would be no legal ramifications. Right. And I think if we were to get rid of some of the, oh, so he knocked you out? Oh, you touched his wife? All right, well, have a good day. Yeah. But here, people, if you do that 10 times and nothing happens to you because people are afraid to punch you, well, now you have a free pass to try to do more things and just keep escalating until...
Well, we also know that violent behavior is often sourced in violent behavior, so that kind of feeds the cycle. But
I think violence does solve most things. And if you don't agree with me,
you can go to Bosnia and tell them yourself.
I think he's going to punch you.
Yeah, that's how you prove a point, right?
Oh. I like this idea though about the way that Europeans desensitize young people to the fact that, say, breasts are not just sexual objects; they're also a part of the human anatomy, right. And they have a multi-purpose. They're the Swiss Army knives of the body. It's multiple purposes there.
But isn't it like what, 2?
3.
3?
Breastfeeding.
That's 3?
Yeah, what are
the first 2?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I knew breastfeeding was one of them. I was just wondering what the second purpose was, just for us to look at them.
There's sexual purpose, and then there's just they're there.
Oh,
I don't think that's a function.
I think your analogy of a Swiss Army knife is pretty awful because a Swiss Army knife at least has 4 things on it.
It sounds like we need to be
I can get a Swiss Army knife whenever I want to.
That sounds like... Okay, well, I'll have to...
You're going to have to work on...
I'm going to have to come up with some more uses for breasts, then.
You're going to have to come up with your breast analogy, or fix your breast analogy a little bit.
You're going to have to augment the breast thing.
Regardless, this idea of being raised in a society where it's just not a taboo to see them, and then comparing that to the United States, where people from a very young age feel guilt, fear, and oppression about human sexuality and about attitudes towards the human body, it's bound to just not be helpful.
Well, yeah, I mean, growing up, I was taught that... first of all, like that, even passionate kissing, immoral thoughts, those are mortal sins. All right, and even if I just thought them, it's the same as doing them, so I'm going to hell. So yeah, why would I ever want to think about a naked lady if that was going to send me to hell?
Oh, that's my favorite commandment, by the way. Thou shalt not covet. It's a direct thought crime, quite Orwellian, where you're punished for the very thoughts you have.
And it's no different than actually doing it in the eyes of the Lord.
So I might as well just do it then, right?
Yeah, I know that's
hey, you can beg, you can ask for forgiveness,
right? I feel like there's a flaw if you can do whatever you want to and just say sorry.
Yeah,
like I can't do that with my friends when I've been drinking and apologize the next day. Most of the time, they're like, no, that's not cool. Like, how does God just excuse everything?
Well, the only thing He won't excuse is if you claim He's not real.
Oh boy.
Well, actually, Oh, sorry. Were we still on this topic? Or?
Well, I guess the only thing that I was going to bring up, you mentioned, a lot of countries, they have the candy shots. Oh, I remember being 6 years old and my dad giving me money and say, hey, go to the store, get me a pack of smokes, get me 2 beers, and get yourself ice cream.
Yeah. Nice.
But there was no calling the store or anything like that. I would just go there and I would order that.
Yeah.
And I would come back. And I would give my dad the beer.
The ice cream.
Right. Yeah, and then I would just chug the beers and smoke a pack of cigarettes, But I never thought anything of it. And I didn't drink until I was 20 years old because when I came here, everybody's like drinking so bad. But then I see all these kids drinking all the time. I'm like, I've never seen this type of drinking where you get together and let's just drink and drink and drink until we don't feel good anymore.
I know. I couldn't when growing up. Like so many of my friends were like, my parents are gone. I've got to get wasted, and I didn't grow up with that kind of mentality. Right. My parents didn't want me to drink, but they're also like, there's nothing that we're going to be able to do if you really want to drink. So they fostered an attitude where it was just like, well, be safe. Don't drink and drive, that kind of thing. And so then when other people, like when my parents would leave, I wasn't like, hey, I need to get wasted and everything. I was just like, oh, my parents are gone.
My parents just bribed me.
To drink?
To not drink. Well, they thought they were using reverse psychology on me, but I wasn't. When I was an early teenager, I was convinced I didn't want to drink anyway. Because in my hometown, people who drank ended up as mechanics and farmers. No offense, Jay. And so they said, oh, I bet you.
So what's your gripe with farmers and mechanics?
Yeah, I'm kidding.
There's this mentality in a small town where if you're a farmer or a mechanic, you're never going to leave town. So I was.
Yeah, if your farmland is in one area,
right.
It's hard for
Plus,
you to leave.
if you've been working for the same mechanic shop since you graduated high school, where are you going to go now?
Right. No, and I was just terrified of that idea. I was terrified of not being able to leave or not being able to travel. So
that makes sense. But Amir, we actually brought you in here because we kind of, instead of talking about our gripes, we actually figured that you would probably have your own gripe of your own gripe of your own. That's redundant. But did you have a gripe that you wanted to talk about today?
I have gripes that I could talk about all day, every day. But
you can't think of one now.
Right now, because I'm on the spot. Let me take a look at my notes here. I don't have notes. As a former stand-up open mic comedian, I don't even like to use that term because I don't think I've earned that term. The reason that I am a former comedian is I just kind of got tired of everything that has to do with comedy, from the promotion, from the performing, from trying to build an audience, and then also just the family responsibilities that I had. So why did I quit? A lot of people ask me, why did you quit?
Hold on a minute. So when I invited you onto the Open Mic Gripe, did you think that you actually had to gripe about open mics?
100%.
Okay.
Well, that is the only thing I thought of. I'm like, but I guess I'll have to think about negative things about the open mic.
How long were you a comedian?
About 2.5 years.
Okay.
Right away when I started, it was 4 times a week type of thing. And then as my personal relationship started falling apart, I kind of cut back to maybe 2 nights a week. And then just once a week, and then you'd have that off show here and there that you would do. But right away I absolutely loved it. I thought that this was the answer to all of my problems.
Really?
And it was right away. Well, because you go to work and you're not happy, that as soon as you're done with work, you can go out on a bar, get some drinks, talk with some friends, and laugh.
So you found it quite therapeutic.
Well, absolutely. Who wouldn't? You get to go out drinking every night and laughing.
And I think that's a big thing for a lot of comics, is that they need to talk about a lot of their issues.
Right.
You don't find a lot of comics without some kind of issues that they need to talk about.
Right. And the fact that you have this outlet and you have similar-minded people, right away it's very inviting and it's very enticing to do this. You're like, well, I feel great. Especially when you're starting out and you have that, everything is a big deal. You go on first time and everybody laughs. It's mind blowing. It changes your life. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe that I have that much power.
Would you describe it as a high?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and it's funny because Amir, I started about 2 or 3 weeks after Amir did, and it's funny though because we have very different viewpoints on the way we do a comedy or like how we feel about it. Because like I know when we'd get done, Amir would always be like, "Oh, he's like, how do you think you did? How do you think you did?" And I'd always be like, "I did all right." No matter what, I always felt like I did all right. And Amir would usually be like, "Tonight was the greatest night ever. I'm going to do this forever." Or it's like, "That was the worst thing I've ever done. I don't ever want to do this again." Where I was a little bit more even-keeled.
Yeah. And for me, and that's just the type of personality I have. It's either it's the greatest thing ever or this is the worst thing I've ever done. And then slowly, as I kept having that feeling, and then I just couldn't get to that same high anymore. It's basically just like a drug addict. Like, I need something more to fill this void. But I wasn't doing anything besides doing the exact same thing. So there was nothing filling the void, and all of a sudden, it slowly just started becoming more of a chore than anything else. It's like,
more of a chore.
So yes, I love doing comedy, but you know what? I love doing comedy only if people laugh.
And that got really tough for Amir because people quit laughing.
Right, and that's the thing. Obviously everybody knows that open mics, you have to try new material, and that's how you build yourself as a comedian. Well, I got to the point where I'm like, I don't want to try new things because that's a lot of work during the day. I got to figure out, how do I make this thing funny? Well, I don't want to say the old stuff because people have already heard it. So it's not really, they're not giving me genuine laughs. So then I would just get into my own head, and then it just became a chore. Every night I'm like, oh man, I got to figure something out for tonight. What if it doesn't? And then as that progressed and I started doing it less and less, I was just... It's not the same as it used to be, and I was only in there for 2 years, and it takes about 10 years to be decent.
Yeah.
Really?
That's the general rule. It takes about 10 years to even get good at comedy. I did it for 2 years, which in the comedy world is I basically did nothing.
Right. Well, it takes about like 10 years for people to really find their voice and to find what their thing that they can bring to everybody.
Well, I mean, just in terms of, and I would suck at comedy. But
that's definitely.
But just in general, if somebody's out there listening to this and they're wondering if they should give comedy a shot, what would be the advice you'd have for them to try it out?
Well, you just got to try it. You have to try it.
Okay.
I mean, you're not going to know whether you like comedy or not unless you get up and do it.
I don't think you should try it. I think if your friends think you're funny and you got some good one-liners, you might have a chance. But like if you're just like, I want to do it just to do it, you're not going to take it seriously. If you're just going on stage just so you can say I was on stage for 5 minutes to get off, just so you get over your fear of public speaking, and you use jokes that you found online, and you don't
do that.
you don't truly understand what stand-up comedy is, I don't think you should try it. I think if you're a fan of comedy and you understand what comedy is about, and it's more of a, especially in open mics, it's more of a community than anything else. If you go out to a random Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday night, and you go to an open mic and there's 6 people there, and it's your first time trying to do comedy, you're not going to do it again.
Yeah.
It's because it's like, okay, this was the scariest thing I've done in my life, and there was no payoff whatsoever.
Right.
And I think that people really do need to think about it. I've loved comedy since I can remember, and it took me 18 years of loving comedy to say, I think I could do this.
Wow. Okay, so you've been a fan of comedy for a number of years.
I've been a huge fan. I listen to comedy more than I listen to music. So I love comedy. I love everything about it, from all different types of, and different genres of comedy. I really enjoy it. And I never really found myself in any certain genre. I would kind of be all over the place, and that's the whole, it takes 10 years to find your voice.
Right.
Because one day I would be the angry comedian. The other day I would be the goofy. Then I would be the dirty, raunchy one. Then I'd be the, is he being racist right now? So there's different things, but that's because I knew what comedy was and the different venues and ways that you can approach it. But then I just lost the zest for it. And it wasn't just because of myself. It was also, as you do comedy, you realize the scene can tend to be a little bit like high school.
Yeah. Where
you have the popular, funny comedians that everybody likes. And then you have maybe the dorky guy that doesn't do that well, but he just comes out all the time. Then you have the guys in the middle that are, kind of friends with the really popular guys, and they're like, "Hey, come on with us." So I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of cliques in comedy, and you got to make sure you don't piss anybody off, and if people don't get asked to do this show, and they take offense, and now they have a personal vendetta against this person, and then
Is that comedy or is that Fargo?
That's comedy,
that's
Fargo.
comedy.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of this stuff spills out on Facebook, and there's a lot of jabs going back and forth, but we're not in taking it just in a humorous way. It's being personal, being mean, insulting somebody because you both enjoy doing the same thing.
There's just a bunch of assholes out there.
Well, and
I would say there is. I mean, unfortunately there is, but people, you could be the funniest guy ever, but if you're being a dick to people, why do I want to come on and see you?
I think that's the thing that kind of bothers me is that comedy is a very individualistic thing. And just because somebody doesn't like what somebody's doing doesn't mean it's not funny.
Right.
I mean, like, if you take somebody like Zach Galifianakis or Dimitri Martin, I'm sure for a long time people are like, what are you doing? That's not funny.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing that. But they stuck with it. They stuck with trying to put their voice out there, and they made it, and they're doing what they want with it. And what I find a lot of times in the community is you find a lot of people telling you how you should do something.
Well, I've always admired people like Louis Black who are able to bring the serious elements into comedy, talking about politics and talking about world events and such. But at the same time, it's in such a way that you can enjoy it and not have to.
I have a hard time imagining what a Louis Black you said Louis Black, right?
Yeah.
What he would do on an open mic. I feel like that he would not get the response that he gets, on his when he's doing an arena.
Well,
because people are like, who are you to tell me? Why do you have opinions about this? Why aren't you talking about your dick? Why aren't you trying to make me laugh of something simple? But that's what a lot of the people would, and a lot of the comics, that are in that area would be like, some would get it, like, I see where this guy's going, and a lot of people are like, hey man, you're walking the audience, knock it off.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think one thing is we learned early on is they said, it's easy to make a room full of 300 people laugh.
Right.
It's hard to make a room of 3 people laugh.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing is that you really needed, and that's, of course, a lot of time, a lot of open mics, and especially around here, you don't get big open mic crowds.
Right. Well, I've personally seen you both on stage.
Yeah.
And
who's funnier?
Well,
don't forget who you have to do a podcast with every week.
I am not just being political here. I immediately recognize that you two were the most skilled on stage.
Excellent.
And
thanks
very
for
different
sucking up to us.
very different styles of comedy, But I enjoyed it very much. So you mentioned you were a fan of over a decade of comedy.
Yeah, it's been 18 years. Ever since I remember, of being a teenager that gets to make his own decisions. I remember a friend of mine had a Bill Cosby record. It was Bill Cosby himself, or it was Bill Cosby is a very funny fellow. He had a record and he put it on.
Huh.
And I didn't know what it was. I had just came to America. I barely could speak the language.
Okay.
And he put this thing on, and all of a sudden I'm crying with laughter. And I was like, what is this? Because I didn't know about comedy. It's not like, here, kids are growing up seeing Jeff Dunham or seeing Larry the Cable Guy selling chips or something like that. So they like, oh, this is what comedy is. I didn't know. I had no idea what the concept was, and I heard it. And to me, right away, I'm like, I love this.
Right.
And then I'm like, how do I get more of this? But this was back before everything's available on the internet, or I hope you have 6 days to download a song.
Yeah.
Right.
And I didn't have any money as a 12-year-old to go just buy stuff. And I didn't even know what I would buy.
Yeah.
There was nothing for me. So I would just kind of ask my friend, I'm like, what else do you have? I like something like this. But, he's just like, oh, it's my dad's record. I don't know what it is, but this guy's funny. My dad laughs, so I laugh. And then now my friends laugh, but we really didn't know what it was. And then I remember the second time somebody was playing a Jeff Foxworthy CD in their car. And I'm like, this is a real thing here. There's more of this. And then as I got older and I realized that I have Comedy Central, and there's all these stand-up comedians. And I remember watching, and the first time I fell in love, Comedy Central did their top 100 stand-up specials. And I just watched all of them in a row. I just remember just watching everything and absolutely falling in love with it.
Right.
And there was so many, from 100 different comedians I got to see in, 20-minute bits. And I was like, this is amazing. But I would love to do this because I always thought it was funny. I'm like, oh, that'd be great because I've always loved attention. I'm like, oh, I'm funny and I love attention. This would be great, but I could just never do it. I never could do it until, most people start off comedy when they're young. They're in college. They're gonna try the open mic. I started comedy when I was married for 6 years and had children and had bought a house.
So you're saying you had a wealth of material?
You can say that. I've had more.
He wouldn't.
Yeah. I probably could have had the material, but I focused mainly on 6 things that I would talk about.
Yeah. But I gotta say, like, one thing that I really enjoyed about your comedy is when you would talk about like back being in a refugee camp and whatnot, like, because that was experiences that nobody could relate to, which I thought was amazing. Because a lot of times with comedy, what you need to do is you need to relate to your audience. And one thing is you were bringing up stuff that people couldn't relate to, but it was something new, and I think that's really where I could see your voice headed, like bringing up things that not necessarily people could relate to, but you brought it in a funny fashion.
Yeah, and I don't know, just a lot of people, gave you the pity laughs, like, oh, guy was in a refugee camp, we should probably laugh, right?
Well, no, I appreciate it the most when you brought up the ideas of racism and especially how people are unable to place Bosnia geographically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I thought that was great because you're playing into this audience fear about making a faux pas.
Right.
And since a lot of them probably didn't know where Bosnia was, they were like, that makes me laugh because you're right.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times I told people I'm from Bosnia and they don't even look outside. They're like, Boston?
Oh.
I'm like, I mean, I can see how, how you can maybe pick that up. I'm like, but I don't sound like I'm from Boston at all. But, and then there's been times that I'm like, yep, Boston. And I just walk away. I mean, what else do you do? I mean, I'm not going to sit there and try to explain to somebody where Bosnia or what Bosnia is.
Right.
Because they don't know. And to be honest with you, most people don't care. It doesn't affect them. They're like, that was like a chapter in my history book.
Yeah.
Nothing like being
There
from
was a whole chapter on Bosnia?
Well, it might have been a snippet.
I was going to say it might have been a picture and a tag.
Right. When I say I'm from Bosnia, a lot of people, kind of give you that strange look. So you have to tell them 84 Winter Olympics were there. And even though they have no idea that the 84 Olympics were there, they're like, I know what Olympics are. And then
you do the accent well.
Right. But you almost have to validate yourself where you're from so people don't think you're from, some sort of tribe, in South America. They're just like, oh, Olympics were there. Like, okay, well, that's a real country. That's a real place. I'm like, remember there was a war? Like, oh, yeah. I've seen that on the news. Like, they don't understand, but why do you care? And I've gotten to that point. Why do I care where somebody's from?
Well, why would you if you live in the greatest country on the earth?
Exactly.
USA.
And that's the thing, and I noticed myself, must have been a couple years ago, when the whole thing in Syria started. And I had no idea what was going on, and I felt guilt. I'm like, I've gotten my life here going like, I can't believe people don't know about Bosnia more than they should. And that was just on me, thinking like, everybody should know what I went through, hey. Give me the attention, but that's just because I'm a attention-seeking whore, and I need attention all the time. But I'm like, why don't people know about Bosnia? And then I'm like, I don't know anything about Syria. I don't know why we're there, what the conflict is, what the issue is. And then that's when I truly felt American. Yeah. I was like, I don't care about these people. Like, I am safe. Why do I care?
Send the bombs.
Right. Whatever. Yeah. I'll vote yes or no. I don't know. I don't care. And that's the mentality we get here. Is
right.
It doesn't affect me. Leave me alone.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate this perspective. I think we so rarely get to hear from the new American populations.
Yeah, I hate being called the new American population. I've been here for 18 years.
I love it.
Yeah, I'll still have people like, so you like it here? I'm like, well, I guess this is the place I've lived the longest, so I don't know how to even respond to that. Like, no, I fucking hate it. I don't know if you can swear on this podcast or not. Right. But, it's like, what am I supposed to say? No, I hate it. I just still keep on living here. Yeah, it's the worst, but I'm not going back. I'm just going to, just tough it out here. No, like, this is my home. I know what different life was, but it was in different circumstances. But, like, I don't know what a life is, without being here. This is my home now. I am an American as much as you can be, besides I have the goofy name that people are like, you're not American.
Or besides not being born here.
Right, and that part,
Which makes you a terrorist.
Yeah, but then there's also, some Americans that were born, on a Navy ship somewhere in Indonesia that are also Americans. So what's the difference between us?
They're in the Navy.
No.
Yeah,
I suppose.
they're heroes. Wow, I just got to say, Amir, it's been a huge pleasure having you on the show, and
I'm not going to say that.
That's great. Did we finish the open mic gripes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we can.
Nobody
probably
cares
wind it
anymore.
No, I think it's hugely interesting, and I want to experience more comedy. I just can't stand listening to Jay after the first couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand that.
That's one of the reasons I quit comedy. It's just like I co-hosted a show with Jay, and I'm like, okay, same jokes over and over, with a lisp.
Yeah.
A lisp.
This guy comes back from not doing comedy for like a year, and then he doesn't even have anything new.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, I remember I was 4 months in, and I got asked by a national headliner to do a guest spot at the only comedy club in town. I was 4 months in, and some of the guys that have been there longer were not very happy.
Yeah.
Because comedians, they are individualistic, and they base themselves and their success opposed to others.
Right.
And people were not happy. They're like, how did you get that? I'm like, I don't know. He just asked me, and I said yes. I was so new at it, and that was the first time I did a show for 150 people, and I did great. And it was one of the greatest things ever. But after that, I got this, like, a big head. I'm like,
Right.
Comedy's so easy for me. I don't know you guys have been doing this for years. I've been doing this for 4 months, and like everybody's laughing at me. Like I felt like this pseudo celebrity for that night, standing next to the bathroom when people walked by and said, "Hey, great job tonight." Because I remember doing that when I would go to comedy shows when I was 18 years old, and I would say, "Hey, great job tonight," and people would talk to me. I'm like, "Oh my God, the comedian talked to me." Even though he was just some dude that does open mics elsewhere,
yeah.
I felt that like I'm at the level where I want to be, and then it just went downhill from that.
Right.
You know, I gave up. I'm like, I'm so good. I don't need to practice. I don't need to do anything. I'm so much better than everybody. Like, I don't think people just realize how good I am, and then I realized like, oh, I have such a big head, and I'm not as funny as I think I am, and it just kind of went downhill, and I lost it all.
I have to thank you, Amir, that this whole podcast you didn't once say, "I'm usually really funny," which is what kind of happened towards the end of your comedy career. There was a lot of times where you were just telling people how funny you were.
Yeah, when you don't have material, but people used to laugh at you, like, I just, this is kind of embarrassing, guys, because I am usually really funny, just not tonight. And after about, 8 or 9 times in a row of going like, not funny again tonight, guys, but hey, remember, it used to be funny.
Remember those times that was funny?
All right, so 30 seconds. Summarize a gripe that you've made today.
A gripe that I made today?
Yeah.
Oh, I really hate doing things in the middle of the afternoon on a Sunday.
There you go.
I wanted to spend time with my family, and the next thing I was like, oh, I got to go do a podcast in the middle of a Sunday. Like, this kind of stuff. Can't we do this at a different time?
Right. You needed to go to church.
Right. It wasn't church. I was just like, I can lay around right now.
You are in your sweatpants.
I am in my sweatpants, so you took me out of my comfort zone.
we try to challenge people.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Amir.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank everybody. Thanks a lot to Amir, and of course myself, Jay Rice, and Jeffrey Ide. We'd like to thank you for joining us and listening to the Open Mic Gripe, the place where serious and silly complaints come to chat.
Yes, we'll be bringing you new episodes every week, and we'll be encouraging everyone to participate by sending in your gripes, grievances, and opinions to openmicgripe@gmail.com. That's one word, openmicgripe, or tweet us at openmicgripe.
And we sure hope you enjoyed this episode. We sure hope you enjoyed our interview with our first guest, Amir. Again, Amir, thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. And I also do want to say, if you don't have any gripes and you just have basically ripe fruits or anything like that, you can also send that in.
Okay.
Some people might not catch up on the G there, so.
Also, if you have any remaining bubblegum stickers from Bosnia.
Yes. Oh, we would love to get one of those.
We would love to get some of those.
I would love to see one of those naked women.
We are going to have to do this entire podcast in Bosnian just so they can get it,
Next year.
So again, thanks again for coming out and joining us for this episode.
Well, thank you for having me. This was great.
And if you didn't enjoy this episode, make sure to check us out next week when we will be discussing your gripe.
Thank you so much.